Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nafisa Atiku, Program Manager at Dataphyte Foundation, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the August edition of the Dataphyte webinar series. We're so glad you could join us this busy afternoon. Thank you for coming in. It promises to be a great and engaging session. I can't wait to hear and interact with our amazing panelists. But before we dive into the meat of the matter, I'm going to yield the floor to the Program Director for Dataphyte Foundation, Mr. Femi D. Amele, to give the welcome address. You're welcome, sir, and the floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone. So grateful that you've taken your time to join in this very crucial time. Just to mention a few things that is very fundamental to us along the lines of this conversation. It comes at a time when the issue of foreign influence is being talked about in many circles in different ways. In some instances, it's being talked about that it's not there, that there's no evidence to back the fact that it is there. And in some instances, it's been described as being there and not of any implication to our governance in the country and what we intend to achieve. But the last protest across the country from the 1st of August to the 10th of August has brought on indicators that there's good reason to examine how close we are to some of these realities, considering the fact that across some states, and I do say states across West Africa, we're seeing a situation where you find quite a number of the citizens there believing that they achieved much of what they achieved simply because of the involvement of foreign influence. And some of this foreign influence includes countries like Russia, China, and you name it. In the Nigerian protests, as we had it, despite the fact that there were flags raised in quite a number of northern states, it's of interest that the Russian embassy definitely had their say by denying any involvement in such. Now, it's also interesting to say to you that just yesterday to today, we've seen the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, also change quite a number, two key directors, the DGs of the SS, the Security Service, and of the NIA as well. I want to believe that it's a move that builds on coincidence, or it's a move that says there's something about our intelligence community that needs adequate response and responsibility to be held and go on in such a sequence. But that's much of the brief I know about. Nafisa, alongside with brilliant men that she'll be talking with, Silas Jonathan. I'm sure proper introduction will be made. And of course, Hamza as well. Will provide more perspective both at the local level and at international level. These two gentlemen are brilliant. They have quite a roadmap and influence digital footprints of their work and conversations that they've held around the world on subjects similar as this. So we thought it best to bring them in. And here at Dataphyte, we're really keen about having this kind of conversation along the lines of foreign influence and what it means for us and what it means for Nigerians, what it means for our democracy. Dataphyte continues to understand the role of technology, the role of foreign influence, and of course, the role of data that provides such insight as regards where we are. So we're excited to lead with this conversation at this point in time in the month of August as part of our webinar series, which we've been holding every month, even until now. So with that said, I welcome you once again to the August edition of this webinar. And yes, get ready for an interesting time over the next 90 minutes. We believe that the best of ideas will be shared, rest of insights will be provided, and you're welcome to write in your comments and commendations as we go on. I'll be back towards the end just to say thank you. But for now, Nafisa, over to you.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. I am convinced that no one could have done a better welcome address. So this is why we pick you almost every month. So please, when we come back next month, please avail us the opportunity to jump and give the welcome address, or be the moderator, or deliver the closing remarks. Great. So now that we've been able to do that, please can we do a virtual round of applause? And if you can't, we will be moving right into the next session, which is introducing our panelists. So please, could we have their bios as we introduce? Okay, well, not me. Everyone knows me. I'm the program manager for Dataphyte Foundation. We have a lot more important people in the room today that we want to spotlight that we'll be hearing from. First up is Mr. Hamza Ibrahim, who is a Nigerian journalist and fact checker, disinformation and harmful speech analyst with a decade experience researching the social media ecosystem with a focus on tracking and countering disinformation, hate, threatening, and call for violence speech in Nigeria. That's amazing. In the last 3 years, Mr. Ibrahim has been researching this misinformation related to health, election, security, and hate speech in Nigeria. Hamza has been trained on foreign influence, on foreign information manipulation and interference by Africa's Center for Strategic Studies, Washington, D.C., and International Republican Institute. Hamza is also a freelance reporter covering Northwest Nigeria for Reuters and Semaphore Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for our amazing panelists. Thank you so much, Mr. Hamza. Also, before I forget, you can also do your virtual introductions in the chat group. This can also serve as a means for networking. You can put your name and your organization, and I'm sure someone will be able to, reach out on areas of collaboration. Right, moving ahead to Mr. Silas Jonathan. Mr. Silas, can we have his bio on the screen, please? Right, Mr. Silas. Mr. Silas Jonathan is a seasoned professional with a passion for truth and combating information disorder. With multiple years of influence, he has established himself as a skilled researcher and fact checker. As a digital research manager at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, CGID, Dubawa, Silas leads efforts to uncover the truth through effective research studies, meticulous fact-checking, and open source investigation. Another amazing round of applause for Mr. Silas. Please, our panelists in the room.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Oh, great. Nice to have you here, Mr. Hamza. I hear. Hello, Mr. Hamza.
Hi, Nafisat. My network was troubling, but I'm back on the call now.
Oh, great. Nice to have you. Welcome back. And thankful and happy that both of my panelists are in the room. We look forward to an engaging session. So, is there anything you would like to say to the audience before I begin the questions?
Well, for me, it's just to once again thank the audience for, sacrificing time to be here. I look forward to having a robust conversation, learning also from the audience. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Silas. Do you have anything before I give a brief introduction to the panel session and then go ahead into the questions? So, ladies and gentlemen, and in recent years, Nigeria has experienced a surge in foreign influence, particularly from global powers. These countries have increasingly positioned themselves as key players in West Africa through economic investments, military assistance, and diplomatic engagement. Nigeria, as Africa's most populous country and largest economy, is a significant target for these foreign interests. We seek to expand their geopolitical influence in the region. Now, the August 24 protests in Nigeria, driven by really incredible economic hardships, social unrest, and government policies, have provided a window into the extent of foreign influence in the country. The visible use of Russian symbols during these protests is indicative of a broader narrative where foreign entities and groups might be leveraging internal dissent to further their strategic objectives. The fact that security services detained tailors who produce these banners and arrested Polish nationals linked to the distribution of the flags underscores the Nigerian government's sensitivity to the potential for foreign manipulation. Now, this webinar will provide a platform to explore these critical issues, offering insights from experts such as Mr. Silas and Mr. Hamza, and fostering a dialogue on how Nigeria can navigate the complexities of foreign influence in a socio-political landscape. And now we are going right into the questions. I will start with Mr. Hamza. So, Mr. Hamza, how do you perceive the influence of foreign powers such as the West, Russia, and China on recent protests and civil movements in Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much, Nafisa. I think my few comments on this will be that we begin to see some sort of growing or emerging influence externally. And this for us I will say lately, is something really new. And this cannot be unconnected with the fact that certain events or trends have triggered that or have motivated that. There are various schools of thought, which eventually I think we will give some accounts of. But I think the junta in Niger Republic last year was in some way a motivating factor to the way in which the interference we're seeing and the manipulation of information is happening. Even the Russian flags and the Putin chants, pictures, and so on and so forth during the Nigeria August protest was largely, I think, from what I have gathered and from the short study we have conducted and observation we are doing currently, is in some way linked to the experience in Niger Republic, because we have seen even before the protest some sort of mobilization by Nigerians in diaspora and Nigerians in Nigeria, and which we have, when you look at the tactics and the technicalities involved in the way in which the mobilization was done solely on social media, you can hardly separate the fact that there is a great linkage and there is a great motivation between the Niger Republic junta and the way in which socio-cultural and even religious ties between northern Nigeria and Niger Republic have for long been. So basically, now it is, I will call it not frightening, but something that really we should pay attention to, because these two countries you mentioned may not be the only countries interfering with the information ecosystem in Nigeria. There may be others, but this has so far been obvious to us that yes, Russian influence is continuing to grow, and especially it has taken a dimension. Why? We will have to ask and answer these questions. Why during the Nigeria protest, and why during on the first day, and why in Kano, and why after in Kano, and then we saw it that even in Kano we have seen that the waving of Russian flags and chants, pro-Kremlin chants, have been growing sporadically. It started in one location and it grew to have been occurring on daily basis in more than 5 locations within Kano City. And then that had, sparked and,
Hello, Mr. Hamza, are you still there? I fear you might be having an issue with the network. Okay. I'm sure he will be back. I'm beginning to see questions in the chat box. Please keep them coming. Looking forward to an engaging Q&A session. Mr. Silas, are you there? I can see you're here. Right. Hello, Mr. Silas. Could you kindly unmute yourself?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes,
Welcome
I
back.
can. Welcome back. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Are you, am I the one hearing myself echo? Is someone using 2 devices at the same time? Okay. Okay, great. So I'm going to jump to the next question with you, Mr. Silas. So, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Yusuf Tuga, issued a stern warning that the Nigerian government will not tolerate any form of foreign interference in the ongoing protests. He also stated that the government will take action against any entity within the country found to have directly or indirectly supported the protest. Now, that's a very, very strong warning. And so basically throwing it back, right, in the light of past protests and, violent uprisings in Nigeria, most notably, the Boko Haram insurgencies, can you elaborate on the dynamics of foreign influence and how they have manifested, not just in the end bad governance protests, but in similar conflicts, violent uprisings and protests that have happened, in Nigeria's history? It would be great to hear, your feedback and perspective on these issues. Let me know if you need me to do a recap.
Well, thank you very much for having me in this conversation, and I think it's a timely discuss, and I'm glad that we are having this conversation even at a time like this. I think it's a broad question, but then I just want to say that foreign influence, it's as old as man, you know. When Adam and Eve, someone argued that when the serpent came to the Garden of Eden, it was foreign influence, you know, because it was a foreign element in the garden. What I just want to say is that when you look back historically, nations with superior power have always tried to assert their dominance in most places, not just Russia, not just China, not just the West, even the West particularly, you know. But then the question is, why is the discourse revolving around these two countries, particularly Russia and China? Well, why are they always the culprits? Are we biased to focus on them? Why are we always talking about them? The thing is, even the US in England or other Western countries have had influence. We've seen how France has a lot of influence in Western African and Francophone countries, even currency and all of that. But the question on why Russia and China, it's even a problem. I just want to highlight on that. It's because they have anti-democratic narrative in the usage of disinformation as a tool. One reason why that is a problem is that if you look at some of this Western influence, it's mostly pro-democracy. And when in the other instance, we have a foreign influence that is pushing towards military governance, chaos, and anarchy. And anywhere it goes, we've seen that the footprints takes over, and then you see what happens next. It's military government. We've seen it in Niger, we've seen it in Burkina Faso, we've seen it in Mali. Wherever the flags just popped up, next thing you see, it's the military coup. Military coup is not good governance. I know that sometimes people are tempted to like it, but it's not. It is a form of government that has no inclusion. You've never seen a woman in the cabinet of a military government. That's just by the way. I just wanted to highlight why Russia and China it's in the center of this. But historically, if you look at Nigeria back from the civil war in 1960s, there was a lot of influence in the Nigerian civil war. I mean, we've seen countries supporting either the secessionist country or the secessionist movement, or then Nigeria. We've seen a lot of that if you read that. And key significant events that have happened recently that I can say has some elements of foreign influence, although not proven. It's the Nigerian elections, and I know that is contentious because the research we conducted, we found that there was a lot of bots activities on Twitter, although we couldn't trace it to anybody, but we saw that lots of disinformation that was happening was influenced by accounts in foreign countries. And although nothing particularly, the expanse of this disinformation during the election and how it is connected seems to point to the direction that it is just beyond the Nigerian context. And also the NSAS recent protest that we've had. Recently, I'm privy to some data that is showing that there is some foreign influence against the government in place at that time, although nothing particular evidential. But I think that the bold one that we have seen, it's the recent one during this protest, and people keep asking me, what is the evidence of foreign influence in key Nigerian events and all of it? I think this one in particular is the one that we can point to and clearly say with no here and there and say, hey, this is what is happening. Currently, I'm moving around, although I wouldn't be so particular, but I'm moving around the north to sort of really hear this thing and get the facts as it is, because most of the things that we have now are just hearsay. you know, and we've seen people with flags, but who has the facts? Who has the data? Who knows why these people are waving this flag? Who sponsored the flag? Who paid for the flags? So aside the video evidence and digital footprints that we have seen during the protest, which is significant in all past events that we've seen in Nigeria, there is still the growing need to find factual evidences. Interviewing someone that was waving the flag, and he was telling me that someone gave him the flag to wave it, and he didn't even know it was a Russian flag. That he was told that the flag is a freedom flag that signifies freedom. And then people who gave him the flag referenced the flag to the one that the president was standing behind. So it's saying that, oh, you see, even the president is so most of these people that even wave the flag, as I would like to say, it's an evidence of foreign influence. It's an evidence of ignorance, if you ask me. But whatever it is, one of the things that comes with the chance, especially in Hausa language, one of the things that comes with the chance is the chance for military takeover, which I clearly have some evidence of that. Also, the chance for Russian intervention. And why so? Why so at this time? Why so at this time? From June, if you look at Nigeria's inflation rate from June has almost doubled, you know, from 22 point something, I think now it's at 34.2. And these are real numbers affecting people. And you also, like Hamza raised, why is it also happening in the north? I mean, when you look at almost 7 northern states, including Kogi, share border with Niger Republic. And Niger Republic has multiple anti-Western NGOs. I mean, they that are just pushing back Western influence. So when you look at Nigeria or even Africa entirely, there is influence, whether it is Western influence, whether it is Russian influence, whether it is Chinese communist loan movement, there is some influence everywhere. But what the ones that we have seen dangerous to our own ecosystem, it's the one that I'm referring to the ones we've seen, the one in the Russian conversation. But evidentially, when we trace back the history of Nigeria and key events, we can spot one or two inputs of foreign influence, although not particularly linked to any country, but we can pinpoint that. But why this is a concern is because it's directly a threat to our own democracy and self-sovereignty. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Silas. I wasn't expecting less, and that was a very detailed and explanatory answer to my question. You know, it's just, you know, highlighting some of the things you said that, you know, most of these things are hearsay and that we need more hardcore research and evidence being done on these issues. I think it's also pertinent to mention here, you know, that Dataphyte for quite some time has also been working to produce research material and try to bring together like a community of practice where we can talk about these issues and basically pass down the information and insights even to to marginalized communities who might not understand, you know, the dynamics that are at play here, so that they are not basically used, you know, in the process, you know, of all this interference. So thank you so much, Mr. Silas. I'm going to move on to Mr. Hamza. Are you back now? Mr. Hamza, could you, you know, unmute and let us know if you're back?
Yes, I am.
Oh, all right, great. Thank you so much. I'm basically going to go towards your, you know, your side of the woods here and bring up a conversation, you know, on disinformation. So my question is, how significant is the role of disinformation or information disorder in shaping public perception about foreign involvement in Nigeria's internal affairs? Do you need me to recap?
No, that's okay, Nafisa. Thank you very much. I think the issue of information disorder as a sector, and of course, disinfo in general, when we look at it from the perspective of FIMI, you know, external influence, information ecosystem, and so on and so forth, I think there is a great linkage. And then I also like to lay this brief background that yes, some of these people who had raised or waved Russian flags had also been chanting pro Putin or Kremlin support, are very much, to my knowledge, based on my interaction and of course series of interviews I had and the engagements, I knew that some of them are actually doing that out of the fact that yes, they are frustrated with the way in which hardship has been spiking up in Nigeria. So basically, even the issue we are talking about, foreign influence, foreign campaign, information manipulation, has, found a very fertile ground, because it came at a time when people in themselves are frustrated, people are angry, okay? People are so fed up with this reality of life that people can't have food to eat, prices of foodstuff have gone up, families, some people are even dropping out of school. So I think majorly why this issue is becoming so serious at this time is the fact that yes, there have been factors that have triggered that, and these are what I've just mentioned. If this situation of hunger, of life become messy to many people, is unavailable, you wouldn't have had this high number of incidences where people even are calling that yes, military takeover is welcome, coup is welcome. They want a military takeover, they want a coup, they want everything. In fact, what people actually believe that is just that they want this government. Let me be very frank with you, people, no matter what, they want an alternative. And the alternative is simple, that this government, they have lost confidence in it. So that is why even the foreign campaign and influence is finding it very easy to penetrate, and the manipulation is happening at a very fragile situation. So people, the fragility and vulnerability of people had further influenced and has, exacerbated the way in which the acceptance of the foreign influence by the people is being welcomed. Look at how people are saying that yes, Putin should come and take over the country. They don't even know what Putin, who Putin is. Some people have no background, have no idea who Russia is. But all they are aware of is that yes, Russia is supporting Burkina Faso, is supporting Mali, is supporting Niger. Russia is a generous country, is donating grains in tons without logistics for delivery to Burkina Faso. So that is majorly the perception that people have. People believe that Russia is such a very nice country, is such a very generous country, and is just an alternative to America, to UK, to France, to all the Western powers. So because of the situation that we find ourselves in, many people believe that the only way out is Russia. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that the situation that we find ourselves is the one that has aided the foreign influence campaign, because you hear that all those who are raising the Russian flags, when you ask them, they will say yes, they knew they are raising Russian flags. And some people who were dragging Nigerian flag on the ground, they knew what they were doing and they know it is an offense. But because of their critical situation and condition, they think they can do anything, because they said an angry man, a hungry man is an angry man. But I think the point here is we are delving into a very dicey situation where credible information, factual information is hard to find, because many people have been misled into believing this narrative. And as we speak, even though this protest is not over, this campaign is not over. This campaign has just started. It has started long ago, not with the August 1st protest, but it has started way back, even before the Sahel, the Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger experience. It has started way back, but then it has become more pronounced, more prominent lately. And this is certainly not going to continue, not going to stop anytime soon, because the exposure that many people have had in terms of their understanding through disinformation. Many people have been disinformed, have been misinformed into believing that Russia is a good country, Kremlin is a good partner, you know, and then France, Russia, and you can see that videos, all these influencers on TikTok, on Facebook, Instagram, and so on and so forth, some that have even been acting been acting under the coordination of certain cartel that is responsible for distorting the whole information ecosystem around not only the Sahel, but in the whole West African sub-region. And interestingly, I would say that this happens not only in English, but in other dialects as well, in other languages. When you look at like Hausa language is spoken not only in Nigeria, but in other parts of the Sahel and West Africa. And you find that content that are being produced and shared in this language is a huge content and is making a huge influence. And as I said earlier, there are people that, from my findings so far, I don't know what the data will have later, whether it will confirm or discredit it, is that some influencers that are Nigerians by origin who are living abroad have actually helped this matter very well, because they have shared a lot of content, especially on WhatsApp, where you hear that people have been addressed in the language they understand, how important is Russia, how important is Putin, how helpful Russia will be. So they have been largely influenced to think that when they even come out to express their anger regarding the hardship in Nigeria, they should combine that with pro-Russian sentiment. And that is what exactly has played out. And this continues to play out. Anybody who goes on social media, monitoring the conversations, just taking a look at how things happen, will certainly testify to this, that yes, this campaign has started and it is a long journey. And of course, I want to believe that this is not a one-day coordination. It is a highly coordinated campaign that is targeting different categories of people. As you can see, not only on one platform, on different platforms. There is one instance that I would like to just give a brief account of. One person I've studied who has started his influence campaign, I think a day to the protest, was dropping content every 5 minutes. Even though, surprisingly, the content he was dropping has not gathered any momentum, has not generated any engagement. But the fact is that this guy has sustained his influence campaign and using a lot of mis and disinfo narratives, okay, targeting certain categories of people. And sometimes the metrics or the engagements are also not the only parameter to understand whether something has created an impact or not. But I know that, yes, there are others who are also in charge of several other platforms. So what I'm saying here is that it takes a long time to plan. And of course, also many actors are participating in this sort of campaign. And that is why we are having it flooding the whole architecture on the cyberspace.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamza, for that very explanatory and response. While you were speaking, some people from the audience also dropped their own comments, which I think resonates with the conversations we're having today, right? We have Habibu Yahapapa saying, I think we should respect the ability of our people to have agency as they follow developments in the world. The West and their democracy and liberal economic policies of free market has not transformed the lives of the people over the last 3 decades. As multiple centers of power emerge with alternatives, the people are seeking for an alternative to capitalism and democracy. The point I want to bring out here is poor governance poor governance has damaged the value of our democracy. Economic difficulties since the global financial crisis have made people to question the value of private sector-led development, especially with the increase in tariffs of electricity and subsidy removals. The people are fed up and aligning with China and Russia as symbols of resistance was alternative. I agree with the panelists. Right, okay, so that's an opinion from the House, something worth interrogating and worth thinking about. We still have the Q&A session coming up pretty soon. Also, we have in the chat box our own Dataphyte's own research publication on foreign influence in West Africa's security sector. So to the audience in the room, you can please download it. It contains accessible, verifiable data and analysis. It's an enjoyable read, trust me. And now I am going on to Mr. Silas. Mr. Silas, I can see your video, so I know that you're definitely there, right? So my question is, we just talked about, how the poor state of the economy is really, really fostering, this giving room for this kind of foreign interference. And my question is, what role do you think economic hardships and government policies play in making Nigeria more vulnerable to foreign influence?
Well, I think it's clear. A hungry man is a desperate man. I mean, that's how I see it. I just a while ago, while speaking, I gave you the numbers of almost 3.33.4 growth in inflation, which translates to, double the price of goods and services people can buy in the market. And why is this happening in the North? Is because the North significantly has more a poverty rate. I wish I have the numbers to back that up. But traditionally, when you look at how when the issue of whether it is out of school children, whether it is food scarcity, whether it is drought, all those issues usually roots itself more from the northern part of Nigeria. And not just that, when you look at the trend of foreign influence and how hunger is played a part, you will see that it has showcased itself in Niger, it has showcased itself in Mali, it has showcased itself in Burkina Faso, where hunger takes the center stage. What you get is that people now start to seek for other alternatives. It could be Russia, it could be whatever it is, as far as it's going to make the prices of goods and services cheaper. People don't mind. But that is not usually the reality of things. Things are not cheaper in Niger Republic. Things are not cheaper in Burkina Faso. I've met people from Burkina Faso. It's not better. Things are not that. But also, like Hamza highlighted, usually it comes from the flare of disinformation, where people are misinformed to think that maybe the grass is actually greener elsewhere, or maybe you need to be in heaven before you enjoy a good life, and that isn't that. But how is the government, how is government policy even contributing to that? I'm not in the government, and I might just say from a journalist perspective, the first thing the president did when he came to government was to take away fuel scarcity, to take away fuel subsidy. And I see that. I remember then people were so happy. People were chanting. People were so happy. I remember even reading, I think, a Dataphyte publication of what taking the fuel subsidy will mean for Nigerians. And for most people that were there, ordinary people that were there, they thought it was the big change. And at that time, most people who were even calling for that fuel subsidy maybe didn't even know what fuel subsidy removal meant. But that is an immediate government policy that we saw change the price of so many things. In a country where almost half of the population are poor, if I must say, taking a drastic situation like that, even with good intentions, I would say that it didn't help the situation. And then another thing is that the continuous debt that we in Nigeria bend on collecting. Recently, the IMF debt that we took in billions of dollars to be paid in 10 years. And now the problem with that is that it is easy and convenient for the government in place to take such a loan, because in 10 years, they wouldn't be the people in government to pay for it. So that's the problem that we've been having, that sometimes these drastic policies, economic policies, have to be taken because governments keep taking rushed decisions, maybe to acquire more money, or maybe to implement things that people can see, maybe do a road, implement things, and then at the end of the day, when the next government comes, they want to do a drastic. But like when two elephants are fighting, it's always the grass that suffers. So it always comes down when things like this happen. It always comes down to the people. And then why you see that these policies now makes the grass greener and more acceptable for foreign influence to even dwell is that people now become hungry, people now become desperate, and then people are now calling for options. You can ask yourself, why wasn't it so keen in Lagos? We didn't see any flag in Lagos. We didn't see any flag in the Southeast. We didn't see it in the South. We particularly saw it in regions of the country where there are issues with hunger and food affordability, and where there is a massive, extensive need for such supplies. So maybe when we draw the conversations to recommendations in that, maybe I can say more on good policies in that. But I think that some of the negative policies that the government been taking, particularly the fuel subsidy removal, more collections of loans from IMF, which means that in 10 years from now, another government might want to take subsidy away from in another aspect, or just do something drastic just to recover, and service that debt. We also see a rise in electricity tariff, and so all these things, when you put them together, you will see that there is a policy. It's now proportionate to a very desperate people, and now a very desperate people who are now desperately looking for options. And I've been hungry once myself. I've been hungry, really hungry. Normally, what I will not eat at that time, if you give me, I will just devour it. So that's the situation. But I understand also from the aspect of the government that, you have to make these policies to make better changes. I mean, there are brilliant minds in the government, people that have years and years of economic understanding. And I know that these decisions sometimes are not just sporadic. I know maybe if you speak with them one-on-one, they would give you the reasons why they do that. But I think that when I look at it, I see that when I look at it in the previous years that we've had, I see that this is particularly, if you ask me, one of the most impactful time in Nigerian history, where government policy immediately is impacting on the people within the shortest time possible. It's directly impacting people within the shortest time possible. Also, look at the scarcity in fuel. So if there was removal of subsidy and then there was a lot of fuel, maybe people wouldn't feel it. But go to Lagos, there is queues in Lagos, there is queues in the Southeast to buy even the fuel. So it's now even making it more difficult, more tougher, So I think the question itself that you asked me even speaks for itself. It is the policy that some of the policies that the government is picking that is really and directly impacting on some of these things that we're seeing, creating a very welcoming environment for whoever has an alternative option for people to follow. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Silas, for that, answer. I'll be going on to Mr. Hamza. Mr. Hamza, are you there? We are coming to the end of this particular panel session, and then we're going straight into the Q&A. Mr. Hamza, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So my question to you, sir, is what challenges do journalists face when reporting on foreign influence in Nigeria, especially regarding potential government censorship or foreign interference?
Okay, so I will begin with the one that I think is of great concern to me and to many other colleagues that I have spoken to. Journalists have been sometimes, once they pay attention to, foreign influence and sort of things, they are being regarded as sellouts. Okay, they are being even regarded as they are colluding with external powers to do something that may be, not in the interest of the country. I think this is a great challenge, because you find that the way in which people perceive journalists who work around FIMI in general is that they are working for external powers. They are working for the enemies. They are working for countries that hate their countries that give blueprints to your countries. I'm just giving you the exact comments of the ordinary people, saying that, look, you are just being unpatriotic, okay? Because these countries whom you are working with, who are supporting you to do this investigative reporting around FIMI, or track FIMI, or write reports around FIMI, they are also responsible for the backward of your country. They are giving you blueprints that take you back economically, politically, socially, right? So I think this is of great concern to many of the journalists that I know, that I have spoken to. And of course, this sentiment continues to grow. And this sentiment also has its roots around disinformation, because people's perception and mindset has been shaped towards looking at anything from West as just an agenda to, destroy your country, as an agenda to, to take your country down, to take your country back, and this actually hurts, because no one will be seen this way and feels okay. And then also, apart from this, journalists who walk around FIMI or foreign, campaigns, influence, and of course, within the larger information disorder, risk also being profiled by the other countries, okay? Because we know that, Kremlins and its friends may be interested in also those who are working around FIMI, especially FIMI that has to do with the Russia, with China, and so on and so forth, okay? Which obviously is not going to be favorable to Kremlin, China, and so on and so forth. So I think these two factors, or these two challenges, are what I can think of as we talk around challenges that journalists run into, as far as tracking or working around foreign influence or information disorder that may be influenced by other external factors. Nafisa?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Thank you so much, Mr. Hamza, for your response. And my last question will now go to Mr. Silas, and then we jump on to our Q&A session. Mr. Silas, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now, how do you assess the Nigerian government's response to foreign manipulation or foreign influence, such as detention of individuals involved in distributing foreign symbols during the protests? Do you need me to recap? Okay, great.
Well, there was I spoke to someone in the police, and he told me that in Kano alone they have arrested 7 Polish citizens, not citizens, nationals, who were waving the Russian flag during the Kano protest. Just that I haven't seen them yet. So the government response, I particularly sometimes don't want to speak in a way that, but generally what I'm trying to say is that the steps that have been taken is not so encouraging, as I would have wanted to be. Maybe that was what informed those two changes in the security security agencies yesterday. But when you look at some of the steps, they are mostly hearsay. For example, a lot of people have been arrested. If a lot of people have been arrested, where are those people? Who are those people? And on what basis? Is it just waving the flag that is the crime, or are there other things? And I think that for most of the time, government has been gaslighting the main issue. The elephant in the room has been ignored. All this conversation that we've centered it on foreign influence, but one of the key aspects of where our conversation has driven to is that why is it even gaining grounds? And I think that that's where the government is not even looking at it entirely. Why is it gaining grounds? Why is it gaining grounds? It is gaining grounds because things are expensive. It is gaining ground because people are desperate. It is gaining ground, but then it doesn't seem like there is a concern towards that. What we're seeing is the typical government way of responding to things. Say, we are in charge. This is treason. This is blah, 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 blah. But it is a good way to say that that some arrests have been made. But what if they're just some innocent folks who were not even part of it? But that's another aspect. But particularly if I'm looking at this with the most critical perspective of it, I see that one, the government is not doing a lot to respond to the key critical issue that is making this this thing flourish. And then secondly, there is also lack of awareness. There is lack of awareness. Until we saw this was happening, foreign influence as a term is not a popular term in the Nigerian media or even in the Nigerian space in terms of conversation. It is only maybe amidst experts that you hear, oh, foreign influence, oh, blah, 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 influence. Even the Russia conversation, people didn't really, people were not so in tune with it. It was when it happened that we said. So there is that lack of awareness about what the implications is. And I think that it is very important, not just for government, also generally for journalists to sort of cast a light on that. I don't mean even intricate investigations on that. Sometimes just write and explain on the implications of what is happening. Ask questions. If this happened, why is this happening, and what is the implication of it? I read a comment in the chat where someone dropped there. Yes, and I totally agree with those issues raised, that is really making people accept some of these things and really welcome the available options that we have. But the thing is that Russia and then China have been packaged in a very welcoming way. You look at it, there are lots of Telegram groups now that are portraying the Wagner Group as very strong and powerful military body that can crush any sort of terrorism, and linking their efforts in Niger, crushing the terrorism there, and the portrayal of all of this propaganda is making people to think that, yeah, maybe that is a better option, but it is not. So we also need to not just the government responding, we also need to sort of enlighten people on the impact of foreign influence, especially this one in this context, and why they should ask more questions. Why, even if they are pushed to the world, that might not necessarily be the best option. But particularly if you ask me, aside the arrest, I do not see anything very tangible as regards to quick policy changes, just making deep-rooted changes that will impact, because this is what we know now. We don't know what is coming next. I mean, recently there was some clash in Abuja. We didn't know that would happen, but it did, and we don't even know what is boiling. Like Hamza said, there is a growing society of people on TikTok, promoting Russian narratives. I mean, I and my team at CJ alone, we have like almost 100 accounts, and some of these accounts have thousands of young people following them. There is on Twitter again, influencers on Twitter that we have marked. These are influencers, they are actors, some of them are filmmakers, some of them are musicians, promoting Russian narrative. So these are all other issues that if the government wants to pay attention, needs to pay attention from the road, work with experts and see how that can also be curtailed. But if you ask me as of the moment and what is happening, and I've been asking questions, and aside the arrest, there isn't anything. And even the arrest, you can't put faces to them. You can easily put faces to people that are arrested that have stolen chicken in their communities, or that have, that have done some human-based criminality. You can go as a journalist and you can even ask them questions. But in this regard, nothing has been seen except the essay. And I think that there has been a total gaslighting of the main issue, which is not being attended to yet, especially in the regions where we saw those flags being waved. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Silas. Those are really concerning. That's really concerning information that you just shared. Even talking about people on TikTok, hundreds of accounts pushing, a foreign narrative. That's deeply concerning. And like you said, it's not just about arrest. It's not just about a blunt force solution, but it's about looking at the issue intelligently and proactively and seeing what we can do. We have come to the end of this panel session. I want to thank my panelists, Mr. Silas and Mr. Hamza. I'm not letting you go because we still have a session. This is scheduled to end at 1:30 latest. We do have a session where we take contributions and questions from the audience, and that's what we are about to start. I can see someone just, put up a comment and said, I believe we are also not holding leaders accountable for the actions when in leadership positions, and the media upholding its role in investigative journalism and bringing out different perspectives when certain conversations are discussed. Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Aliyu Rabiu Shuadu. Okay, so please, if you do have a question for our panelists, Mr. Silas and Mr. Hamza, I would ask you to, raise up your hand so that we can unmute you and you can go ahead and ask your questions to promote more dialogue on these issues. Once again, Dataphyte has a research publication on foreign interference in West African security sector, and that link to download the report is also in the chat. Please, if you have any questions, looking forward to hearing from you. If you could please, just raise your hand. Or do we have any contributions from the room? We have very erudite panelists here who will be able to take any question. Oh, you asked Mr. Habibu. Okay, sorry, my apologies. If you can't speak, you can also put in the chat box as well. My apologies for not mentioning that sooner. Please, if you can't speak, put it in the chat box. Mr. Habibu has a question. I'm going up to it right now. Yes. Mr. Habibu asks a question. Do we have evidence of foreign interference in our country? That's number one. And how do we determine that influence? So, Mr. Hamza, Mr. Silas, I hand over the mic to you to answer that question. Thank you.
Let me quickly respond to that. That's a good question, very valid question. If you go online now and try to find the question to the answer that you have asked, hardly would you see anything, right? And the thing about it is that there are even people waving foreign flags in the street is an evidence of foreign influence by itself. But I know that that's not what you're asking. You're asking for hard, concrete evidence. If people are waving flags, how can we link them to? Since Russia said we have nothing to do with that, And so this is a process. And I can tell you, I know a number of people that are currently investigating this to find hardcore evidence to link this. And it's not going to come easy. It's not easy process. But it is a continuous process. And I know a lot of people that are currently working on it to find the connection. It is one thing to say that people are waving Russian flags, people are promoting Russian narratives online, but it is another thing to particularly link it to Russian to Russia itself directly. There were lots of Telegram groups that we have marked that were managed by the Russian Foreign Ministry, that were, sort of cooking narratives that would be spread on different kinds of social media, more like ideating on how to make influence people. But as of last week, some of these groups that we marked are no longer existing. It's like somebody is trying to just clear their operations there. And I also want to raise something, one evidence and fact that we have. Last year, there was a claim that that Nigeria was the originator of the monkeypox variant. I think it's a variant, and it wasn't true. When we started tracing historically, United Nations linked that to Congo. But where did that information came from? If you browse now, you will see even some news houses publish that, And then when we start tracing it, we saw that the news publication itself came from the verified Russian Foreign Ministry handle. So you see that is a direct link in terms. I can call that a hardcore evidence. But if you want to find more evidence, especially in the context of what we have seen recently, it is not something to expect so quick. It is not something to expect so fast. But I can tell you that it is building up. And I think it's good. It's very important that you read also the link that it's dropped by Dataphyte on that. I'm looking forward to reading it too. And collecting data and putting out takes a process. So that's where that's what I would say on that. Thank you.
Just to add, Silas, quickly, you see, there is no way in which this question can be answered in a very obvious manner. Unlike advertisement that you take to a radio station, where your name is mentioned as the sponsor, or whether you are a company, whether you are a government agency, or electing people, these sort of campaigns really have no clear mentioned stated sponsors, okay? But the tactics, the techniques, and the trends, all these indices and dynamics that are, within the information disorder, interference, and manipulation are the assessment tools that gives you the justification that yes, this exists. And I want to confirm to you that yes, there are evidences, and all the discussions we have been having since the past 1 hour are the clear evidences that yes, foreign interference is existing in Nigeria. Because you see, there's no way you will see that certain platforms on social media are completely dedicated to, spreading certain piece of information from certain angle, shaping it, influencing it, and then packaging it in certain manner, or targeting specific sort of audience in a specific language, in a specific sort of form and communication. So these are all sort of dynamics that we study to understand and justify that yes, foreign influence and campaign happens. If you're looking at any physical, any obvious, any tangible element, maybe A, B, C, I don't think you can find that. But if you are studying the trends and the tactics and the techniques and other dynamics that are being studied are what gives you the information and credible, reliable evidence that yes, foreign interference exists. And of course, yes, one needs not to think any further to understand that is this sort of campaigns or interference, influence campaign, they do happen, because they have not started here, they started elsewhere, and then gradually we are seeing the manifestation of these sort of campaigns transferring from one location to the other. I'm just giving, when we began talking, I gave the background that yes, this has started on the first day in Kano with just a handful of protesters. Okay, now the second day, this sort of event grew to become from maybe just a group of people, say 20, 30 people, it grew to over 100. And then the next day, you're talking about over close to 1,000 people, right? And then moving to another direction. So what do you think will have motivated this sort of event to happen? And what about the influencers online? What about the content you come across online? Do you think this ordinarily just happened? No, honestly, there have to be producers from behind the scenes who are clearly interested in shaping the mindset of certain people, of having people creating certain sentiment and wanting people to behave in certain way, right? And this is really, I think, the new trend within the global information disorder. And I think this does not only restrict itself to the issue of protest in Nigeria. There are other areas. It's just that we have restrict ourselves to only looking at the issues of protest, the incidences, the events, and the FIMI and interference of foreign powers that have maybe manifested. But if we are to broaden, to look at holistically, we will, find incidences maybe in agriculture, in health, in other places, even outside of northern Nigeria. So you see, I think this is a very dicey, sort of tricky, but for me, interesting issue as a media student.
Thank you, Mr. Hamza. So we have another follow-up question in the chat from Mr. Habibu as well. So the head of Telegram has been arrested on allegations relating to the use of the platform for subversive activities. I was wondering if you have access to the tools for tracing the sources of these handles directed at influencing the thinking and behavior of people in a target area or country.
I'm sure Silas will take this question, but let me just say this in a few words. Concerning the arrest of foreign nationals, Polish nationals in Kano, their arrest has nothing to do with raising Russian flags. What they were arrested for doing was that they were bringing out their phones to take pictures of protesters passing by the gate of the university, right? They were student on exchange, and this exchange has been happening for many years between Bayero University and one university in Poland, right? In an exchange to train students, and then all this sort of many students from Nigerian languages department in lecturers, have gone to Poland and had their PhDs, right? So in exchange, in return, they bring their students who come here to study Hausa language and then look at Northern Nigeria culture. So unfortunately, these students arrived a day to the protest. So they had some, noises all over while they were in the campus, and they came out to see, So as a foreigner, they see people passing by, and they brought out their phones to take pictures, and that was the basis upon which they were arrested. And I think this is a diplomatic issue between Nigeria and Poland. I don't know how the issue has ended. Silas, maybe you can take the Telegram stuff. I'm sure you have a lot to say on this.
Oh yeah, thank you very much for that.
It seems Mr. Silas just quickly dropped off. Okay, so we have 15 more minutes for this webinar. If we have any other questions, I would advise you.
Okay, before Silas comes, I will make a few comments on the Telegram. There are tools actually, whether OSINT or other tools outside of OSINT that are being used to study Telegram accounts, not only Telegram, but all other social media platforms to detect, a behavior that is exhibited in a manner that is suspicious. So these tools actually give you the chance to track, to do a lot of analysis, assessment, get a lot of data, and then you study the data and you conclude. And of course, the data, interestingly, anytime you study, there was a Telegram channel that we studied, and it turned out to be that really that Telegram channel is such a very dangerous, channel. The volume of the information that channel was flourishing to, passing to a number of people, thousands or millions, if you like. I think really Telegram is doing a lot of harm. Please allow me to say this, because I'm not entirely condemning Telegram, but I think Telegram is something to be not careful of, but to be studied.
Thank you, Mr. Hamza. Thank you so much. Is Mr. Silas back in the room now? Okay, we have Omolola of Afolabi. Please, let me unmute him. Okay, please unmute and ask your question. Thank you so much. Hello, Omolola Afolabi. Please, can you unmute and ask your question? I can see your hand is raised.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to say a very big thank you to Dataphyte for organizing this amazing webinar. All right, and well done to Nafisa, Hamza, and Silas for the wonderful, wonderful conversations. So actually, I have a question and I also have a contribution. I don't know which one should go first.
I think you could go ahead with your contribution and then finish off with your question. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great stuff. Thank you. So I wanted to say that as a journalist in 2020, I covered the NSAS protests. And so when we're talking about the fact that a lot of people, were incentivized by the fact that maybe there is a sort of financial gains to some participation in misinformation and disinformation, for instance, because the economic hardship has been around for a while, and we understand how much impact it has had on people. So the point I'm trying to make is that while I was on field, I saw that a lot of people were, a lot of groups right there, because the NSAS protest was, as much as it was organic, it was also very organized. So while we were there, we saw that people tend towards groups that actually distributed food, and people were gathered around them and they were encouraged. They showed a lot of enthusiasm for the distribution of food, and they followed all through because there was food. Of course, the fact that they were also riled by what was happening, the police brutality and all of that. But the fact that food was also on ground and there were also drinks, and also people could also relate with the fact that a lot of people have been brutalized. Of course, that was also an incentive. So the fact that these protests people have also been incentivized by the what's it called? They've been encouraged by the fact that, okay, we need to go out there maybe to resolve the economic hardship and all of that. But food has always been an incentive for a lot of things. That is my contribution from my experience as a reporter covering the NSAS protest.
Thank you for sharing your contribution and your experience, Mamalola. I recall you have a question. Do you want
Yes,
to?
I have a question.
Yes,
So,
please.
Silas, for Silas, maybe I can just drop it. I want to ask that a lot of social media platforms have been used as a tool to spread mis and disinformation. Okay, so for instance, TikTok now is one of those tools. So I wanted to ask how we as journalists can outrun those who peddle mis and disinformation, and how we can ensure that these tools are maximally used to spread the right information at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamalola. Mr. Silas, Mr. Hamza, are you in the room? Please, could you pop in for this question? Our panel is still here. Mr. Hamza?
Yes, Nafisa, I don't know if Omolola could just briefly say
Repeat
her
our
question again. I don't know. Please.
Okay. Omolola, please, could you come back with your question so that Mr. Hamza can answer?
Okay, maybe I should give some context. So, for instance, I started my journalism as a traditional newsroom. So, and we would imagine that we were not fully taken on board on how to use these tools well. So what we do now it's actually a matter of self-learning and all of that. But right now, social media has been a very table tool in spreading information. And as journalists, we have to also make use of it. So my question is, how do we outrun those who peddle mis and disinformation to ensure that the public are educated in the right sense, not that they are actually reading up on those things that misinform or disinform them? Do you understand? You get it, Mr. Hamza?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Omolola. You see, there is no jumping fence to people whose job is also a disinformation. I think the only difference with those of us who are interested in giving factual information and others is that we try to give information in a credible manner. And of course, we try also to educate the public that yes, the other people exist and these are their, uh, you know, identifiers and so on and so forth. And of course, also, even the way we package our information differs from the way they do this. But I must also say that sometimes some disinformation instances are structured in a manner that looks very conventional, very standard, and it is sometimes very hard to even differentiate between what is factual and what is not factual. But it is a challenging moment. As a conventional journalist or as someone who tries to give factual information, of course, your training, your ethics, your background, the standard you follow, I think will be the major players for me and will be the differentiating factor between you and the others. And of course, sometimes you find that those people who misinform and disinform others pull a lot of crowd. There is nothing you can do, but the little you can do can of course also go a long way in informing people in a right manner. There are people who are open to accepting factual information, even though they have had a dose of dis and misinfo. But I think it is a very difficult moment if someone believes that because other people are many and are out there disinforming the public, we will just make a little impact. Yes, no matter how small we are, we will continue to be of impact. But I think majorly, my advice to all of us is just to always ensure that, yes, we package our information in a manner that is different from the way in which disinformation appears. I don't know whether that attempts to make any sense of the answer you are expecting.
Mr. Hamza, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Hamza, please don't go away. We have one last question and we will officially round up. So, Mr. Ali, you put in the chat box that ever since colonialism, we do know that governments in Africa are aligned to one power or the other, economically and politically. This has been a concern raised by the late Tafawa Balewa in his speech at the UN. Why is Russia and China considered a threat, but not US and Europe in terms of influence in Nigeria particularly?
Okay, so maybe my short answer to this is that Russia is an autocratic regime that does not believe in democratic values. While the West, the US and other Western powers operate on democratic principles and have always preached democracy, right? So these are two lines drawn by a single pipe in between, left for us to see where we will align ourselves, but we are democratically aligned. And if you see that lately, you will believe, you will agree with me that yes, as you can see, Russia has supported the junta in Niger Republic, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and other, lately, You have seen how the Association of Sahelian States has formed, and you have seen how a growing military regime in especially the Sahel is generating and pulling crowd. So basically, maybe there are many things I can say here, but just to limit myself to say this is a democracy and this is not a democracy. Okay, so of course you also know that Russia will support any military intervention, coup, and so on and so forth, while the West, the US and other Western countries are supporting democracy. So I think this difference or this baseline is the difference.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamza. And Mr. Silas, I think his network was, acting up, but thank you so much, Mr. Hamza, and to Mr. Silas in absentia. And a very huge thank you to every single one of our audience who has stayed and engaged. Now I will be calling on Mr. Femi Amele, Director of Programs, to give his closing remarks. This now ends my watch for today. Thank you for having me. And, I wish you a splendid afternoon. Thank you, everyone. Over to you now, sir.
Thank you, Nafisa. Thank you, everyone, as well, for participating in the last 90 minutes. We have just about 2 minutes to mark it out as 1:30 p.m. Nigerian time. Really grateful to the panelists, from Mr. Hamza Ibrahim to Silas Jonathan. Brilliant contribution, very realistic contribution. I enjoyed the examples. I enjoyed the preferred solutions as well that were being offered in detail around this. There's so much to be said with regards to this. But one of the things we also want to get contact from, for quite a number of people that have been invited and who have participated. But if you do want to know more about some of these webinars and some of our panelists, you can email partners@dataphyte.com. Yep, that's partners@dataphyte.com. It will be a delight to have that. Yes, and of course, Mr. Hamza Ibrahim is still making his own due of the conversation. I'm sure he's getting feedback that quite a splendid comment in terms of all of that. But just to also pinpoint that it's very important that conversations like this do not end yet, because they form the baseline for what happens next, around some of these. And just also to clarify an example in which I believe those who joined in earlier may or may not understand. Some perceived that the military flag, Nigerian military flag, was also being used as the symbol of the Nigerian protests that did go by. Just to say this clearly, the Nigerian military flag is completely different from the Russian flag. The Nigerian military flag has a portion of it in white and, of course, horizontal arrangements. And yes, it's being used by the president during his addresses, but the Russian flag is different from that. So just make sure that that example is not misconstrued or being used wrongly. There are two different flags. And of course, misinformation had its role in playing out to those who perceived they were asking for a military takeover using Russian flags. Just so that I should point that out. But the essence of this kind of conversation, it allows us to know more about subjects and allows us to direct, to know more things. We'll be producing quite a number of policy documents. Feel free to go to dataphyte.com. You get to see quite a number of existing documents along those lines. We'll be leading on the charge in many of those other areas in days to come and months to come. Dataphyte.com, you find quite a number of these materials available to you. If you want to provide a direct feedback, go to partners@dataphyte.com. We'll be delighted to answer your questions and put you in touch if they need be with some of the panelists as we have them on the call or through the Zoom webinar. Thank you so much. We do hope someday soon to have a physical event around some of our webinars, and we hope when we extend invitation to you, you would come around at that due date as well. On behalf of our team, thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating. Good afternoon to you.